Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Writing with Subtext. I'm your host, Jim Hull, the CEO and founder of Narrative First and the creator of Subtext. And this is my special guest, Diane Moore, who is working through her story by using subtext and everything awesome about Dramatica, the dramatic.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Before we get started, I just wanted to say, like every good YouTuber, make sure you subscribe below, right? I'm supposed to point down there as if I'm really on your screen. And then also click the notification button so that you can be informed when we upload the latest episode. And today we're going to get into the overall story through line, which is most of the plot of Diane's story. And over the last week, she went through and started building out the different beats of her story. Isn't that right, Diane?
I did do that. And when we get there, I've got a couple questions for you on different parts of it. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward to your feedback this week.
Excellent. All right, so this is Subtext here, and this is Diane's story. And this is her premise, which the whole structure is built on this premise. Keep moving towards fighting for someone's freedom, and you can save the lives of many. It's a very positive, very uplifting story. And over the week, you did the overall story through line, right?
I did. I did most of it. It was a busy week.
And just to catch people up, for those who haven't seen, Dramatica breaks a story down into 4 different through lines or perspectives of conflict. And these threads run throughout the entire story. So there's the overall story, the main character. The overall story includes everybody. It's basically what most people consider as plot. Main character is the most subjective through line, and that's the first person point of view, what it's like to actually feel all this conflict. Influence character is somebody who has their own way of doing things, which is somewhat similar and impactful on the way the main character, in a way that challenges that main character to possibly consider doing things a different way. And then the relationship story, which is often the relationship between the main character and the influence character, is the heart of the story, or the felt dynamic between the 2 individuals. So this round, or this week, we went over, or Diane was going to work on the overall story, which is here. And as opposed to something like breaking it up into separate acts, this just follows the whole path of the overall story through line. So do you want to walk me through it? I will drive and you can point out things.
Sure, yep.
Or actually, you know what, maybe I'll do this since I'm driving. So Cozy unthinkingly performs magic, forcing his dad to take them both to the witch's house. Okay.
Right, and we had that from last week.
And then this is Layla. She's the protagonist, so she's the one pursuing and helping people think about, making things better, trying to resolve the conflict here. And so first, Layla's instincts tell her that they don't want to go into the house. She tries to flee. So Layla follows one's inner voice while making someone understand something. So what these beats are doing is they're breaking down this first thing where she's made to understand. Layla tries to get out because she doesn't understand what's going on. Why did Dad leave? As she tries to work with the 11th, she realizes that magic is a thing. Okay, so the first beat of that is her instincts tell her they don't want to go in the house, so she tries to flee. In an attempt to make their powers manifest through fear, Layla are put into an empty magical landscape where she meets Tevil, who speaks in rhymes and alliterations. Layla thinks Tevil is autistic or something along those lines. This is incorrect. This is the magic scape that Reuben keeps Tevil trapped in. It is Reuben's magic that maintains the magic scape. So literally, Tevil is living inside of Reuben's magic. This has kept Tevil from going violent, but not a little bit mad.
So this was one of the questions that I had about the 2 scenes I had you read. So scene 3 is where they're dropped into the magic, the black. So the empty place that just has like a really cold wind running through it. And I wondered if that fell under being put in a deprivation tank if it had that same feel to it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Is that scene missing anything
Oh,
that this particular thing is supposed to be doing? That the sense of the deprivation tank is there something missing from that?
no, definitely not the senses part. Like I felt like you got that. That's in there.
Okay.
What is the interpretation part?
So the interpretation part, there is no way for her to interpret that place correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything she thinks is incorrect. Like she thinks Tevel is like this boy at school and is maybe autistic or something. And she thinks she doesn't recognize it at all as being, she doesn't know what a magic scape is. So she thinks she's like in a place, not in her mind or not in, I'm not explaining this well.
Well,
But
can I just see how the conditioning ends? Because what I
sure.
usually like to do is see what the flow of these three beats are.
Okay.
Layla capitulates to being drugged by the gingerbread cookies, desperate to stay by Cozy's side. Okay. So
So when she comes out of the magic scape, she's
mhm.
actually in a cell. And there are instructions to, she can come out when she agrees to be drugged, or she can stay in there until Luna comes to get her.
Okay.
So to me, the conditioning was actually agreeing to be drugged.
Responses based on experience. So conditioning is more like an opposite to instinct. It's conditioned. Layla capitulates to being drugged by the desperate. Okay, so like these are on the right track, right? This is a good start.
Okay.
But there's a sense that there isn't enough of an inequity here. But there's enough. So this is supposed to create a potential for conflict. This is supposed to play it out, and then this is the outcome. So her instinct's telling her they don't want her to go in the house. She tries to flee. So there's always a tendency, like when we're writing these beats out or trying to use this approach, to make it, the conflict is in the trying to do something as opposed to doing it. So the more you can get away from trying to do something and more her instincts do this, then you get closer to actually using this in the way that it's supposed to be used, which is how an instinct is like creating kind of conflict. It's
Okay.
not like trying to do something, because really that doesn't, you'll find the tendency is to do that, like, oh, she struggles to control something or she struggles to do something, and then it doesn't really like, it doesn't go anywhere, and then every beat ends up being the same thing, right? Somebody trying to do something using
Okay.
subject matter. So there's that, and then the other thing is like the dad forcing his dad to take them both to the witch's house. Like, why? This is not separate from this, okay? The driver is not a separate beat into its own.
Okay.
Talking about the relationship now, because this is the first one in the overall story, you don't really get to see where it came from. It's just like, oh, here's some actions that have to do with instinct. So why was Cozy unthinkingly performing magic? Okay, so
I have no idea.
I would say Is he in here? No. Where's Cozy? Oh, Cozy's not here. So let's add Cozy in here. Put him in the overall story. Now when we go back, I would say, I still think as protagonist, she's dealing with everything, but you should always feel comfortable enough to adjust this in a way. Where is Cozy?
Why is Cozy not there?
Cozy should be there. Let's see one second. Story. Cozy. All right, Cozy follows one's inner voice while making someone understand. So Layla's instincts tell her that they don't want to go in the house. So instead of this, which you can remember, right? If, like, I guess I don't understand. What does he do? What does Cozy actually do magic-wise?
He cheats at fish.
Fish, like Go Fish?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he getting angry about it? Like, isn't it supposed to be like when the guys use magic and they're not ready for it, they get super angry? The reason why
he could have been being angry, but actually I was thinking that he just really wanted to win, and that it let him, I don't know, manipulate the cards somehow so that on the back side of her cards he could see what they were, even though it's not a marked deck. Like maybe
that, yeah, no, that works totally well, like storytelling wise, but as far as creating conflict, if Cozy is like just instinctually does something because he's angry or whatever, the problem with men using magic before they're ready or before they've been worked out of it, like you show this with the very first beat, right?
okay.
So, like what I would think is like upset, getting angry at losing another game. Cozy follows his cheats. Screaming heck out of his father. Pats him up into the house, right?
Well, no, not right then, because Dad takes them on Halloween to go trick-or-treating. So
when does he take him then?
This scene, this beat would have to have been a day or two before, and Dad would have been in contact with Hepzibah and say that, you know, that Cozy used magic or something like that. I mean, I would never put that scene in a book, but it would be background information that of course something like that happened.
Right, but the idea is that he sees his son acting this way, so then he decides to take him to the witch's house, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so this, in here, you're just trying to work out the narrative, the flow of narrative from beginning to end. So it might be broken up into several different scenes, like it's not just, this all happens all at once.
Right.
But you're kind of looking for, you know, this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and they kind of flow together. So the nice thing about this is, as opposed to, oh, I want to leave, and I'm trying to leave, now it's like, oh, there's a huge problem here, because both Cozy just uses his instinct, like he just has the gift, right, to be able to use magic, whatever, and he does it. He shouldn't be doing that. And then Dad, too, his inner voice is saying, oh, this is not good, and his gut reaction is to take him to the witch's house. And so all of a sudden now you have tons of potential for conflict because they're following their instinct, right? So this is actually causing conflict. There's like an inequity. It's like
Okay.
people butting their heads together. So, I mean, I might even do, is Dad in here? No. I mean, you could just leave it as cozy. This, the subject isn't as important as this part is, right?
Right.
Because this could be fluid, it could be cozy, it could be Dad, it could be Layla. But to actually make it conflict, like there's an, and by conflict I mean an imbalance that needs to be righted somehow or resolved. Now you have all this potential here because people are driven to avoid, like prevent something from happening. So Dad automatically is in the headspace where he's like, I do not want this to happen. I will do anything to avoid it. Cozy is trying to avoid losing once again, right? And even maybe if you want to make the scene even more dynamic, maybe Layla is like, once she sees him start to do it, she's like, no, stop doing that. So, you know, Dad's gonna see, and she tries to hide it, and maybe that makes it worse. So anytime you can show avoiding something, a problem in the story, it's gonna just amp up the conflict.
Tensions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, so that's a good start to there. Then I think this, what you have already is great. So then an attempt to make their powers manifested here, it's just a lot of, it's a lot of storytelling, like the particulars of how everything fits into the world, which you have fine, like that's okay. This is more the subtext, the stuff that's going underneath it all. So
I don't know how to separate them. To me, the storytelling and whatever's underneath, they're all intertwined there.
right, which is how most people do it. Yeah, this is like, I mean, it's just something like a skill that you have to build up so that you know exactly what's driving. You don't need to know.
Stronger muscles, stronger muscles.
You could just build it up on your own and just hope that you're doing it right. But if you want to you want to have the maximum potential and you're following this approach, for now, try and stay as close as you can to these writing prompts and not get too carried away with the particulars of what it all means.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to actually do that. I was more, what I was trying to see was if the scene I had already written where she was in the dark and crawling across the ground, and if that qualified as the sense piece.
Well, yeah, because so now if you just did that, placed in the absolute dark and unable to see anything or hear anything in the outside world, Layla, what does she do?
She actually works on mastering her fear, is what she does.
Yeah, so that's really bizarre to me. That sounds like a very holistic sort of beer thing to do. As opposed to, I'm linear, I'm stuck in this house. My dad just dropped me off in a house where I'm in basically a sensory deprivation tank. Actually, that's probably a sensory deprivation tank. And I can't get out.
Well, she's been spellcasted, so I didn't have you read the scene before 3. 3 is where she's crawling around in the dark, but the last thing that happens in the scene before that is Hepzibah and her minions basically tie the kids to beds and ensorcel them. So
and what? And
ensorcel
them?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Is
that a real word?
Ensorcel? Yeah.
Oh, what? I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Cast a spell on?
Oh, I don't never heard of that. Okay, so let's see. So eventually her understanding something is that magic is a real thing, right?
Right.
That's the point. So she goes into this not thinking it's real.
I don't know if it's not thinking it's real so much as not. I think about it in terms of you. If suddenly there was magic in the world and you like might take a hot minute to like wrap your head around that.
But is it that she's a non-believer, or is it the idea that now she understands it's like life or death with her brother?
And not yet. I don't think she gets that yet. I don't think she gets that it's a danger to Cozy yet. I don't think she really understands that.
So in this first act, what kind of understanding does she come to? What, not even that, but what is she trying? Is it that she understands she can't escape from this place by the end of it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yes, but she wouldn't anyway. She wouldn't try. Well, she wouldn't try and escape without Cozy. So.
Yeah, in the same way that we just went through and worked this beat so that now there's a bunch of inequity and imbalance to it, that understanding has to have the same thing. So,
well, I mean, to me, that understanding something happens in earlier in one of the earlier scenes where she's in conflict with Hepzibah. I mean, Hep is basically going, here, you need to eat a cookie so I can test for whether or not you're magical. And she's like going, I don't know what that is, and I'm certainly not going to eat your cookie.
So think this is the first act of a story, right?
Yes.
And you have a teenager here who's thrown into a house because her dad is super paranoid that something bad is going to happen to the son, right?
Yes, but he doesn't tell them that.
Okay, so she's trying to figure out why they put him in the house, right?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Well, I mean, she's told. Hepzibah tells her.
Well, maybe you might want to hold that back, because if her dad doesn't tell her, then why not just have her placed into this house and it's completely empty and you have no sense of what's going on, as a means of what the heck am I doing here sort of thing. So then she's going to try all kinds of ways to get out, and then improperly interpreting something. That's why I'm saying, like, stay with these as close as you can. What is she, how does that lead into some kind of interpretations that create even more conflict for her? You know, is it?
I think what her misinterpretations are have more to do with what magic is and how it works, because I don't think she gets that yet. And it could be that in that first act, I don't know what the last thing is, but that, yeah, that's the act turn, is that Cozy actually does commit violence. Right? That's what we made the first act turn.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's going to be part of what she comes to understand, is that I don't like this, but Dad apparently did this for a reason.
Mm-hmm. So if Dad's following his instinct and drops them off, and then now
I mean, that is also an improper interpretation. She probably thinks that Dad has dropped them off because he's, shirking his responsibility because he's a damn drunk.
Okay.
as opposed to, no, there's actually a danger here to them, to the kids.
But before she even gets to that place, when she's just put into this empty blackness, and I would hold off explaining everything, because especially if the first act is all about understanding, it's not I've come to an understanding mentally. It's I'm doing all these things because there's tons of misunderstandings going on. So she's in this place. So what is she trying to escape? Is she lashing out at people? What is she doing? Like, does she have magic? Is magic coming out of her because now she's, fearful of what's going to happen, and she's worried about what's going to happen to her brother? So now it's like, whoa, how was I even able to do that? Like, that's the senses have to, like, the deprivation of not being able to see and not being able to perceive, whether you're inside or outside or where you are, would drive some sort of action that would increase this original instinct. So they got their gut instincts, and now the senses are going to make things worse. So how could you change it so that she's acting in a protagonist way, where it's like, oh, I'm going to try and escape, or I'm going to try and just start shooting out of her hands or whatever that she's never done before. And then that leads to, like, oh my God, what is this? Is this place evil? Am I being... Those are all the interpretations part, which would then be like, okay, I'm going to agree to be conditioned or trained in a certain way. Or is this just, you're still just making her more, you're still avoiding what she actually does, but it could be that Cozy freaks out. I just feel like if you could stay with Layla a little bit longer, because she's the one pursuing what most people consider, the protagonist supposed to be driving the narrative. Like, what is she pursuing here at the very beginning?
Well, her pursuit is to stay with Cozy, which is why I had said that she would agree to eat the gingerbread cookies.
Okay, but before you get there, so she's in the absolute dark. She's just going to escape, right?
Right. Well, she's not in a place.
No, I get that. But, like, if she is in this place that she's never been before, and it's super terrifying, wouldn't she want to try and get out?
Yeah. Well, yes. Okay. But how long can you go in the absolute darkness before you're like, okay, I'm spinning my wheels? Because she stays there that long. And then the scenery shifts, and she doesn't know why the scenery shifts. But that's actually well, I haven't figured out the exact mechanism for it. My guess is it's either the actual Hepzibah or Tevel that shifts where she is in the magic scape.
Okay. But you want just having her sit there in the darkness is avoiding the physicality of this through line, of the overall story through line. And the understanding part is there's some physics going on, some activities that are creating conflict. So you have this where it's like, all right, I'm taking you guys out of your home and I'm putting you into this other home. But then once you're in there and you have your senses are totally shut down, what do you do? What is she like? She's the protagonist, so she's going to pursue, and
right.
The goal is obtaining, right? The goal of the story is obtaining, so that's escape, get home.
Right, but if you're somebody who doesn't know that there is such a thing of magic, you don't know that you actually don't have any manifested magic of your own yet, so there's nothing for her to use.
Okay.
She can beat against her head against this wall all night and all day and never get anywhere.
Yeah, but so how does she beat her head against the wall?
Well, what does she do in that scene that I had you read? She crawls. She tries to use scratches in the ground to get a sense of direction. What else does she do? She tries to master her fear. Um, let's see, what else does she do in that scene? When the scene shifts, when she's shifted over into Tevil's part of the magic scape, she goes through the elemental door. She has that discussion with Tevil about family. What else do she and Tevil talk about? Magic itself a little bit.
Okay.
So those are all the things that she does
In the current version of your story, right?
in the current version, because she's, so the point for Hep to put her in that situation was to push her to have her magic, or to have magic, if she has it, manifest, and it doesn't do that to her.
So that's interesting from a storytelling standpoint. Like, oh, that's why he's doing it, and that gives justification for why he does it. But it's not creating any kind of conflict in the story, which is why those scenes, for somebody who's reading them, they don't necessarily go anywhere. Like if you look at each one of these, crawling on the ground, scratches the ground to get a sense of direction, masters her fear, goes through a door, has a discussion with Tevil about family, and then she and Tevil talk about magic. Which one of these has avoidance as the driving force behind the conflict?
Well, indirectly, all of them.
So you don't want to do indirectly, you want it to be directly. Like this one up here, it's super direct. Let's see, our Cozy wants to avoid losing again. Dad wants to prevent son from going super violent. And then if you want to, Layla wants to avoid Dad seeing Cozy go crazy. There's tons of it in here, and it's all coming from people's instincts. This is supposed to be from people's senses. What are they avoiding or preventing, right? Avoidance, preventing as a driving force behind the conflict. So it's like, I get put into a world where I can't see anything, and now in order to avoid being killed, like placed in the absolute dark and never seen or hear anything from the outside world, Layla fights to escape from the house, you know, lashing out, doing whatever she can to kind of get away from it. And the harder it is and how the world continuously shifts and things move all over the place, now she's going to interpret like there's no way out, or this is some crazy thing. Like there has to be some interpretation that comes out of all these senses being all jumbled up. So it can come from Hepzibah or whoever's doing it, but because she's the protagonist, right? So Layla is the protagonist. So she's pursuing and considering, which is she is chasing resolution. So crawling on the ground is
to me, that is pursuing. It's not avoiding. She's trying to find a way out, and she thinks that sitting there in the dark is not useful.
right, but I mean, I understand these are opposite, avoidance and pursuing. So she's pursuing the resolution of the goal, but the driving force behind it in the overall story is an effort to avoid something. So what is she, or how is her avoiding something creating conflict, creating an imbalance?
It's not her creating the imbalance. I don't know how. I'm sorry. I'm trying really hard.
Oh, yeah, I get it. No, and this is why. So the ideas are cool in the story, but an actual sense of movement and it going somewhere isn't quite there yet.
Okay.
Because it's not connecting to these things. So I'm just using these things as touch points so that you can start to think like, oh, okay, and just in a really simple manner, somebody who's in a completely blacked out place, if they tried to escape and in the process of doing that, she ended up using magic because she's so afraid of what's going on. And now she's scared and interprets that as like, I'm not sure exactly how she interprets that. And then it succumbs to some kind of training or please, I don't want any of this. Or if she sees her brother do it, do whatever you can to get him out of this sort of thing. Then you have something that has moved from this dead instinct to like, okay, I'm going to take care of it with some training.
Give me so you said on the 3 PSR pieces that the first piece was the setup.
The really simple way is this is the beginning, this is the middle, and this is the end. So in the same way that when we were doing the signposts, like the bigger ones, those are the same exact things, right? So you have 1 here, 2, 3, and 4, right?
Right.
So this is the same thing. Now it's the 1, 2, 3, 4 inside the 1. So this sets it up. So people are following their instincts, creates a ton of trouble. Now people are reacting to not being able to sense things and misunderstanding what's going on, which has to actually create conflict that then leads them to misinterpret something, which also leads to more imbalance and conflict as they try to understand what the heck is going on. And then those interpretations, because they're so misguided, would then allow somebody to get to a place where they would allow themselves to be conditioned or have it trained out of them. And this is just the first act. So you don't want to answer all the questions. That's why I was saying like having everybody explain exactly why they're there and what's going on. You're missing out a ton of opportunity to keep it hidden, to keep the imbalance of the narrative, to keep it going. So it's like, wait, what the heck is going on? I don't get what's going on. Like there wouldn't be a solution to it. This whole thing is the setup of the entire story. So there are likely to be misunderstandings of what this whole house is all about, which then drives them into the second act, where they train, and then they try to escape, and then they learn how to properly do it.
Okay.
So I would say for next week, just focus on the first act. And in the same way that you have a beginning, middle, and end for the entire story, the 1, 2, 3, 4, work through these 3 beats, focusing just on Layla and what she's actually doing. Mastering her fear while there may be something in her main character through line that will probably be something a little more internal, and from this perspective, the overall story, just right now deal with her like just complete cardboard protagonist pursuing and consider, and then you can layer in that stuff later. Because this is mastering your fear is more of an internal thing.
Okay.
And having discussions and talking about stuff is interesting for your world and the storytelling stuff, but it's not creating the kind of conflict that you find in the overall story that is all about physics and about obtaining people doing stuff for their own self-interest. Doing it because they want to avoid something.
See, but to me, my interpretation is entirely different than that. Because to me, her entire discussion with Tevil is about the physics, because he is in a trapped place, and she figures that out when she comes out of it.
Right. So it's not a discussion about physics. It's actually physics. That's the biggest problem everybody has with Dramatica. You're not talking about physics. It's not subject matter. This isn't like Mad Libs where it's like, oh, it's about physics. It's actually physics. It's actually activities. It's actually punching, fighting, kicking, smashing, escaping, killing, stealing. Like, it's actual physical conflict that's creating trouble from the overall story perspective.
Okay.
That's why you have to break out of the using it as subject matter and more like, oh, this is some scary stuff.
I'm trying really hard to, and I'm even actually trying to think of, okay, if I took it as a different prompt and I didn't use the deprivation tank. I liked the deprivation tank because to me it fit what I had already written.
Mm-hmm.
Did that scene feel to you like it didn't have conflict or tension when you read it today?
Yes. Both scenes.
They felt that way.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like I like the ideas. They're cool ideas, but they're not a physics conflict in an overall story.
So a physics conflict of avoidance that has to do with senses. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what I'm trying to think of?
Yep.
Notes.
And I would say we should just stop it right there, because this is the biggest thing anybody needs to figure out when it comes to Dramatica.
Okay. I will focus on the first act, and I will try and so physics.
You won't try. You will complete it.
Physics, avoid senses, leading to interpretation. It's always going to be misinterpretation, right?
No. You could be right. Could be you figured it out.
Well, at the beginning of a story, it's always going to be misinterpretation, because if you figured it out, then where's the conflict if you have it right?
Well, I would say there's a difference between figuring out the entire story and figuring out one bit. It's like if I interpret what is actually going on as for all of these, there's interpreting dreams, there's a positive part to it, making sense of something. So that would be a positive version of it. So in this place, and then she makes sense of it and realizes, holy crap, I'm a dead person.
So if you change that to making sense of something,
that's the positive aspect of it. So if it's like, I can't see anything, and then I make sense, I realize, oh, these people are out to kill me, then I'm going to do whatever it takes to kill them before they kill me, and that's just going to create more physical conflict. It's always, and because you're looking at it from the understanding, the physics, it's always got to create physical conflict. And when that goes south, then it's like, all right, conditioning.
Okay.
Right? That's like if you saw Bird Box, where they wrap the blinds around, or the blindfold around their head and train themselves to be able to walk down the street without being able to see anything. And then that likely, creates more trouble than if you just stay put. So it's always creating conflict because you're just at the very beginning of it all.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Excellent. Another great round of writing with subtext. And as you can see, there's a lot of work to do, which is excellent. So yeah, I would just say work on that first act for this week, and then we'll pick it up in the next episode.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a great week.
You too. Bye, everybody.